My sister-in-law took my child during the divorce. The judge's decision made her collapse. The crib was cold when I touched it. That was the first thing I noticed. Cold wood, no warmth, no soft weight of my baby inside. My son's blue blanket was folded too neatly, like someone wanted the room to look calm. His stuffed bear was gone. My heart started racing before my mind caught up. I turned, already shaking, and that's when I saw her. My sister-in-law stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, calm and steady, like she owned the place. Her lips curved into a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He's safe with me now," she said. I stared at her, my ears ringing. "What are you talking about?" I asked, but my voice sounded far away, like it didn't belong to me. She stepped inside the nursery without asking, her heels tapping softly on the floor. "You've been emotional lately, Vivian. Everyone agrees this is best." My knees felt weak. I rushed past her toward the hall, calling my son's name again and again. Silence answered me. No cries. No babbling. Just empty rooms and a fear so sharp it stole my breath. That was the moment my life split in two. Please hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. She handed me the paper like it was nothing. Just a thin stack of pages, edges crisp, my name typed neatly at the bottom. "This explains everything," she said. "Temporary custody transfer. For safety." My hands shook as I read. Words blurred together, but one thing stood out clearly, my signature. Or something pretending to be it. "I didn't sign this," I whispered. She sighed, like I was a child being difficult. "Vivian, you were exhausted. You don't remember half of last week." "That's a lie," I said, louder now. "I would never sign my son away." She tilted her head, studying me. "That's not what this says. And if this goes to court, they'll see you agreed." My stomach twisted. The date was from 3 days ago. The same day I'd taken my son to the park and come home smiling, thinking life was still mine. She had forged my name. Every loop, every slant copied carefully. "You can't do this," I said. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I already did." The paper felt heavy, like proof that someone had reached into my life and stolen it while I was still breathing. I dropped my phone once before I managed to dial my lawyer. My fingers were numb, my chest tight, like I couldn't get enough air. When he answered, I didn't even say hello. I screamed. "She took him." I cried. "She took my baby." "She has papers. They're fake, but they look real." He went quiet for a moment, then spoke slowly, carefully. "Vivian, listen to me. She can't do that legally." Relief rushed through me, but it didn't last. "Unless," he added, "the child's father supports it." My heart sank. What does that mean? "It means if your husband agreed or backed her story, things get complicated." I slid down the wall and sat on the floor. "He wouldn't," I said, but my voice cracked. "He wouldn't do that to me." My lawyer sighed. "I need you to save every message, every call. Don't confront them alone. This is serious." I hung up and stared at my phone, waiting, as if thinking about him hard enough would make him defend me. Minutes passed. Then my screen lit up with a message. From my husband. The text was short. "Too calm. Too neat. He's happier with family. You need time to heal." That was it. No questions. No concern. No asking where I was or how I felt. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. I didn't pick it up right away. I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to understand how the man I married had decided I was the problem. Happier with family. I had been up every night with our son. I fed him, rocked him, sang him to sleep. I knew every sound he made. And now I was being told I was unsafe. My chest burned. I grabbed my phone and typed back, then erased it. Typed again. Erased. Nothing I wrote could touch the betrayal in those words. I realized then that this wasn't just about my sister-in-law. This was planned. Talked about. Agreed on behind my back. I pressed my palm to my mouth to stop myself from screaming. The silence in the house felt loud, like it was watching me break. The police station smelled like old coffee and paper. I sat on a hard plastic chair, clutching the fake custody papers with sweaty hands. When the officer finally called me over, I stood too fast and felt dizzy. I explained everything. The empty crib, the forged signature, the way my sister-in-law smiled like she'd already won. He listened, nodding slowly, then sighed. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said. "This looks like a civil issue." "Civil?" I repeated. "She took my child." "I understand," he said gently. "But without clear proof of abduction, we can't act. The papers complicate things." I pushed them toward him. "They're fake." He examined them, then handed them back. "That has to be proven in family court." My hands trembled. "So, you're saying she gets to keep him?"
"For now," he said.
"Your lawyer is your best option." I walked out of the station feeling smaller than when I walked in. The world kept moving around me, cars passing, people laughing. Somewhere, my baby was crying for me, and I was being told to wait. I went home to the nursery. I didn't know where else to go. The room still smelled like baby powder and warm milk. I sat in the rocking chair and hugged his blanket to my chest, breathing him in like it might keep him close. Every corner held a memory. Late-night feedings, soft songs, tiny fingers wrapped around mine. Now it all felt poisoned by what had been done. I stood and walked slowly around the room, touching the crib, the dresser, the stack of folded clothes I'd washed just days ago. My legs felt weak, but something inside me hardened. She thought I would fall apart, that I would cry and beg and give up. "I'm bringing you home," I whispered to the empty room. "No matter what it takes." I wiped my face and straightened my shoulders. Fear was still there, deep and heavy, but under it was something stronger. A promise. A mother's promise. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. My lawyer's office was quiet, the kind of quiet that made every word feel important. He leaned forward, hands folded, eyes sharp. "Vivian, we need proof," he said. "Not just feelings. Evidence." I nodded, gripping my bag. "Tell me what to do." "Gather everything," he said. "Texts, voicemails, emails, anything that shows coercion or planning." "What about the papers?" I asked. "We'll have them examined," he said. "Forgery leaves traces." I felt a small spark of hope. "So she won't get away with this?" "She won't if we're thorough," he replied. "But you have to stay calm. They may try to provoke you." I almost laughed. Calm felt impossible. But I understood. I had to be smart, not loud. As I stood to leave, he added, "Vivian, this is going to get ugly." I paused. "It already is." I walked out knowing one thing for sure. I would document everything. Every lie. Every cruel move. If they wanted a fight, I would give them one they couldn't erase. I called his parents next. Straight to voicemail. I texted. No reply. Hours passed, then days. Silence pressed in from all sides. When I finally reached his mother, her voice was cool. "We think space is best," she said. "You've been unstable." The word hit like a slap. Unstable. I repeated. "They took my child." "She's just helping," she said. "You should be grateful." I hung up shaking. The family I had married into had already chosen their story, and I was the villain in it. I saw then how carefully it had been done. Whispers. Concerns. Painted smiles hiding sharp knives. My sister-in-law had spun her story well, and everyone believed her. Everyone except me. At night, I scrolled through old photos of my son, my chest aching. I wondered what he was being told, who was holding him, whether he thought I had left him. That thought nearly broke me. But I held on. I had to. Visitation was supposed to be mine twice a week. Every time I arrived, she had an excuse. He's asleep. He's not feeling well. Today isn't a good day. Once, I waited outside for over an hour. My hands clenched around a small bag of toys I'd brought. Just as I was about to leave, the door cracked open. I saw him. My son was in her arms, his face pressed into her shoulder. He looked confused, tired. When he saw me, his eyes widened. He reached out, making a small sound that broke my heart. She turned away quickly.
"See?" He's upset, she said.
You should go. The door shut. I sat in my car and cried until my throat hurt. That image burned into me. My child clinging to someone else, not understanding why I wasn't holding him. That night, I stopped crying. Something inside me shifted. Sadness turned into focus. I promised myself I would never let her block me again. Not without consequences. The court ordered a social worker visit. Temporary visitation, supervised. It felt like an insult, but I agreed. I would take any scrap of time I could get. She cried during the visit. Loud, shaky sobs. She talked about how worried she was, how afraid she felt for the baby. The social worker nodded sympathetically. I sat quietly, hands folded, watching the performance. I saw how she touched her eyes without real tears. How she glanced at me, checking my reaction. Later, alone in the bathroom, I opened my diaper bag and looked at the small recorder hidden inside. I had placed it there on instinct. A quiet voice in my head telling me to be ready. I turned it on. I didn't know yet how important that moment would be. I only knew this war was far from over, and I was done being unprepared. I kept the recorder hidden deep in my diaper bag under wipes and spare clothes. My hands shook the first time I pressed it on. I felt sick, like I was doing something wrong. But then I remembered her smile in the nursery and the empty crib. That steadied me. During the next supervised visit, she dropped her mask the moment the social worker stepped away. Her voice lowered, sharp and calm. You should stop fighting, she said. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I didn't answer. I just adjusted my bag. She leaned closer. If you keep pushing, I'll make sure you never get him back. Courts hate unstable mothers. My heart pounded so loud I was sure she could hear it. I nodded weakly, pretending fear, while every word burned itself into the recorder. She smiled, satisfied. Good. Just remember, I can keep him forever. When I got back to my car, I sat there shaking, replaying the audio through my headphones. Her voice was clear. Cold. Confident. For the first time since she took my son, I smiled. The pediatrician's office felt different, without my son in my arms. The nurse recognized me immediately, her face tight with concern. We've missed several appointments, she said quietly. I didn't cancel them, I replied. The doctor frowned as she pulled up the records. My son's weight had dropped. Not dangerously, but enough to raise flags. Notes showed missed checkups, skipped follow-ups, delayed vaccinations. This isn't normal, the doctor said. Babies need consistency. My chest burned with anger. She was parading him online like a prize, but she couldn't even take him to the doctor. Can you write this up? I asked. Everything. She nodded. I already started. When I left with the report in my hands, it felt heavier than paper. It was proof. Not just of neglect, but of lies. That night, I added it to a growing folder at home. Texts. Call logs. Dates. Times. Patterns. I labeled the folder in black marker. Evidence. The post showed up on my phone while I was eating cereal for dinner. My sister-in-law smiling, my son on her hip, his hair brushed neatly. The caption read, "My sweet boy blue heart." My hands went numb. The comments were worse. "You'll be such a great mom someday. He looks just like you. He's lucky to have you." I threw the phone across the couch and screamed into my hands. She was stealing my role, my identity, my child, one picture at a time. I took screenshots. Every comment, every caption, the date and time visible. Then I opened a blank document and started typing. I described how it felt to see another woman claim my son. How she corrected people when they called her his aunt. How she let the lie grow. By midnight, my eyes burned, but I didn't stop.
Pain was fuel now.
She wanted the world to believe she was his mother. I would show the world what she really was. My lawyer called early. "We have a breakthrough," he said. I drove to his office with my heart racing. He turned his screen toward me and played a grainy video from a daycare hallway. There she was, holding my son's carrier, signing paperwork. I leaned closer as the camera zoomed on the form. She had enrolled him under her last name. Mother, Williams. I covered my mouth, tears spilling over. She lied to strangers. On record. Yes, he said. And that's very serious. The daycare director had confirmed it. She never mentioned me, never listed me as a contact. She told them I was not involved. My lawyer smiled for the first time. This changes everything. I walked out feeling taller. For months, she had controlled the story. Now, the truth was starting to speak. That night, I slept for 4 straight hours. It felt like a gift. The folder was thick now, heavy enough to slam onto the table. I organized everything carefully, page by page. Texts where she said, "You're not fit right now." Voicemails where my husband said, "Just let this happen." The forged custody papers. The doctor's report. The daycare footage. The recording from my diaper bag. I slid it all into a binder and labeled the spine in bold letters. Custody fraud. When I handed it to my lawyer, he didn't speak right away. He flipped through it slowly, his face serious. "This is strong," he said finally. "Very strong." I felt my legs weaken with relief. "So she won't win?" He met my eyes.
No.
"But she's going to fight harder now." I nodded. I expected that. Because so would I. The courtroom smelled like polish and old wood. My knees shook as I walked in. She was already there, holding my baby like a trophy. I wasn't allowed to touch him.
She smiled when she saw me. Come.
Confident. Like she owned the room. My son saw me and reached out, his face lighting up. "Mama," he whispered. The sound broke me. I had to grip the bench to stay upright. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't look away. I wanted her to see me standing. She adjusted her hold, turning him slightly from me. My heart pounded with rage, but I stayed silent. This wasn't the moment. The judge called the case. My lawyer squeezed my arm. "Stay steady," he whispered. I nodded, staring straight ahead, repeating one thought over and over. "Just wait." Her lawyer spoke first. He painted me as fragile, overwhelmed, obsessively attached. He said I needed help, rest, distance. My husband didn't look at me once. He stared at the table, hands folded, saying nothing. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. My voice trembled at first, then steadied. I spoke about routines, about bedtime songs, about doctor visits and milestones. I spoke like a mother, not a victim. Her lawyer interrupted often. I answered calmly every time. Then my lawyer stood. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't need to. He began opening the binder. I saw her posture shift. Fear finally touched her face. The judge leaned forward in his chair, folding his hands slowly. The room felt tighter, smaller, like the air itself was waiting. "Custody interference is not a minor matter," he said, his voice firm. "It is not a family disagreement. It is a legal violation." His eyes moved from my sister-in-law to my husband, lingering there longer. If this court finds that a child was taken through deception or intimidation, the consequences will be severe. My stomach twisted, but I stayed still. This was the moment everything balanced on truth. The judge continued, "I will not entertain emotional stories or vague claims. I want facts, documents, independent testimony, hard evidence." He tapped the bench once. "If you do not have that, this case ends today." My sister-in-law shifted in her seat. For the first time, her smile was gone. Her fingers tightened around my son's blanket. My lawyer stood calmly. "Your Honor," he said, "we are prepared." He placed the evidence binder on the table. The sound echoed through the courtroom. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. In the hallway outside the courtroom, I leaned against the wall, trying to slow my breathing. My hands felt numb, my legs weak, but my mind was sharp. I knew this pause was dangerous. This was where she liked to strike. She walked toward me slowly, heels clicking, confidence returning like a mask sliding back into place. She stopped close enough that I could smell her perfume.
Sweet. Wrong.
"He calls me Mama now," she whispered. The words sliced straight through my chest. For a split second, my vision blurred, and I tasted blood where I bit my tongue too hard. She smiled, waiting for tears, for anger, for collapse. But something had changed. I looked at her calmly. I saw the desperation hiding behind her eyes, the need to win, to own something that was never hers. I said nothing. That silence unsettled her more than any scream could have. Her smile faltered. She straightened and walked away quickly, like she'd said too much. As she disappeared down the hall, my heart cracked, and then hardened. She thought she had broken me. She had only finished sharpening me. When court resumed, the room felt heavier, packed tight with tension. I sat straight, hands folded, eyes forward. My lawyer gave me a small nod. The judge cleared his throat. We will now hear from additional witnesses. A woman stood from the back row. She looked nervous, twisting her fingers together. I'm a daycare employee, she said softly. My pulse jumped. She explained how my sister-in-law enrolled my son, how she filled out the forms confidently, how she corrected staff when they asked about me. She told us she was his mother, the woman said. She used her own last name. She never mentioned anyone else. A quiet murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge's face darkened. He leaned forward again, eyes locked on my sister-in-law. Is this accurate? My sister-in-law's mouth opened, then closed. Her lawyer stood quickly, objecting, but the damage was done. I felt something loosen in my chest. Not victory yet, but momentum. Truth was stacking up, piece by piece, and it was getting harder for her lies to breathe. Next came the court-appointed investigator. He placed his report on the stand and adjusted his glasses before speaking. I observed the child in multiple settings, he said. At the daycare. During supervised visits. I held my breath. The child showed clear signs of distress, he continued. He frequently asked for his mother. My throat tightened. He became anxious when separated from his Vivian, the investigator said, nodding toward me. He calmed quickly in her presence. My sister-in-law shifted in her seat. Her lawyer whispered urgently to her, but she stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The investigator went on. I noted confusion caused by inconsistent naming. The child responded to Mama, only when referring to Ms. Vivian. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. The judge thanked the investigator and made notes, his pen pressing hard into the page. For the first time, the room felt like it was tilting back toward me. Toward truth. Toward my son. I didn't dare hope yet, but I let myself breathe. The turning point came from a mistake. My phone buzzed during a short break. A text from my husband lit up the screen. Don't worry, it read. She'll never win. My stomach dropped. The message wasn't meant for me. I stared at it, then forwarded it to my lawyer immediately. When he saw it, his eyes widened, and then he smiled. This is coordination, he said quietly. This is conspiracy. Back in the courtroom, my lawyer presented the text. The judge studied it carefully, then looked up sharply at my husband. Mr. Williams, he said, this suggests active cooperation in withholding the child. My husband's face went pale. He stammered, trying to explain, but the words tangled and fell apart. I watched him crumble, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. They hadn't just hurt me by accident. They had planned it, and now the truth was finally cornering them. My lawyer stood slowly, holding a small device in his hand. Your Honor, he said, we request permission to play an audio recording. My sister-in-law froze. The judge nodded. The room went silent as the recording began. Her voice filled the courtroom, clear, calm, cruel. If she keeps fighting, I'll keep him forever. A sharp intake of breath echoed from somewhere behind me. The recording continued, every threat, every calculated word spilling into the open air. There was no denying it, no twisting it, no escaping it. I watched the judge's face harden with each sentence. When the recording ended, the silence was suffocating. The judge removed his glasses slowly.
His jaw tightened.
He looked directly at her. Ms. Williams, he said, voice low and controlled, you may want to sit down. Her knees buckled as she collapsed into her chair. And in that moment I knew. The revenge was about to begin. The courtroom felt frozen after the judge spoke. No one moved. No one breathed. My sister-in-law stared ahead, her face drained of color, lips trembling like they no longer belonged to her. Her lawyer leaned close, whispering urgently, but she didn't respond. The judge shuffled papers, then looked up again, slower this time. "This court will recess briefly," he said. "When we return, we will address custody and potential criminal violations." Bailiffs stepped forward. One positioned himself near her chair. That was when she realized something was wrong, very wrong. I sat perfectly still, my heart pounding so hard I feared it might betray me. My son stirred in her arms, sensing the shift, and began to fuss. She tried to soothe him, but her hands shook. I caught his eye. He reached for me again, soft fingers opening and closing. I mouthed one word.
Mama.
Tears slid down my face, silent and unstoppable. Not yet, I told myself. Just wait. Justice was standing right in front of us now, and it was finally looking at her. When the judge returned, his voice was firm and final. Based on the evidence presented, this court grants immediate full custody to the child's mother, Vivian Williams. I gasped. My hands flew to my mouth. "Effective immediately," he continued. "The child is to be returned to her now." The bailiff stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said to my sister-in-law, "you need to hand the child over." She screamed. "He's my baby," she cried, clutching him tighter. "You can't do this." The bailiff pried her arms loose gently but firmly. My son cried once, then reached for me as soon as he saw my face. The moment he touched my chest, everything inside me shattered and healed at the same time. I held him tight, breathing him in, rocking him as the courtroom erupted in whispers. My sister-in-law collapsed to the floor, sobbing, her screams echoing behind us. The judge banged his gavel. "Ms. Williams," he said sharply, "you are now in violation of court order." This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. I was still holding my son when the judge spoke again. "The court finds sufficient cause to refer this matter for criminal prosecution." My sister-in-law's sobs turned into panicked cries. Her lawyer stood, face pale. "Your Honor." "Forgery of legal documents," the judge continued. "Interference with parental rights. Misrepresentation of identity." Each charge landed like a blow. A uniformed officer approached her. "Ms. Williams, you are being charged," he said calmly. "You need to come with us." She shook her head wildly. No, this is a mistake. I was protecting him." She reached toward my son. Desperation etched across her face. The officer stepped between us. I clutched my baby closer, my whole body trembling, not with fear this time, but relief. As they led her away, she screamed my name, promising this wasn't over. But I knew better. For the first time since the empty crib, I felt safe. My husband stood when they called his name. He looked smaller than I remembered, less certain. The judge's voice cut through the room. "Given the evidence of coordination and complicity, the court revokes your visitation privileges pending further investigation." My husband's face crumpled. "Please," he said. "I didn't mean for this to happen." I laughed once, sharp and bitter. "You meant every part of it," I said. The judge didn't look at me, but I knew he heard it. "Until further notice," the judge continued, "you will have no unsupervised contact with the child." My husband sank back into his seat, staring at the floor. I didn't feel joy. I felt clarity. He had chosen his side. And now the consequences were choosing him. Outside the courthouse, sunlight hit my face, as if the world itself was welcoming us back. I held my son close, rocking him gently. He looked up at me and whispered, "Mama." That single word broke me open. I cried openly then, not caring who saw. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. I ignored them all. All that mattered was the weight of my child in my arms. His warmth, his breath against my neck. We were together. At last. By the next morning, my phone would not stop vibrating. Messages stacked faster than I could read them. Friends, neighbors, people I barely knew. Then the news alerts appeared. Woman loses custody after posing as child's mother. Her face filled the screen, cropped from an old family photo. The story laid out the facts clearly: fake documents, daycare lies, recorded threats. For once, the truth wasn't whispered. It was broadcast. Reporters camped outside my building. I didn't answer questions. I stayed inside with my son, watching him crawl across the living room floor like nothing in the world had changed. But everything had. Online, the comments shifted. People who once praised her deleted posts. Others apologized publicly. Some said they felt fooled. I felt nothing for them. Justice didn't feel loud. It felt quiet and heavy, like a door closing behind me. I wasn't interested in watching her fall. I was too busy watching my son smile again. The backlash hit her fast. Friends stopped calling. Invitations vanished. Her social media accounts went silent, then disappeared completely. Her parents called me 2 days later. They sounded tired, older, smaller. "We're sorry," her mother said. "We didn't know." I believed that they believed it, but belief didn't erase what they'd allowed. "I hope she gets help," I replied. And I meant it. From a distance. Court documents followed. Her lawyer withdrew, citing undisclosed evidence. I read the notice twice, my hand steady this time. The judge scheduled additional hearings. Charges moved forward. No delays. Meanwhile, my ex's silence grew louder. No texts. No calls. Just absence. That was payment enough. At night, I rocked my son back to sleep in his old room. The crib was warm again. The bear was back in its place. The house breathed differently.
So did I.
The courtroom felt different without her confidence. She sat hunched, eyes hollow, hands clasped too tightly. When her former lawyer spoke to the judge, his voice carried disgust. "She falsified medical records," he said. "She did not disclose this to my office." Her head dropped. The judge's expression hardened. "This court does not tolerate deception," he said, "especially where a child is concerned." I didn't look at her. I watched my son instead, safe beside me, chewing on the corner of a book. When the hearing ended, she was escorted out quietly. No screaming this time. No audience. The revenge wasn't dramatic anymore. It was complete. The divorce ruling came less than a week later, and there was nothing dramatic about it. No shouting. No speeches. Just facts, documents, and consequences. The judge reviewed the file silently. My ex stood beside his lawyer, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't look at me once. Not when the judge spoke. Not when my name was called. "Full custody is granted to the mother," the judge said. "The marital home is awarded to Vivian. Child support will be enforced effective immediately." Each sentence felt like a door closing behind me. My ex tried to speak, but his lawyer placed a hand on his arm and shook his head. There was nothing left to argue. The evidence had burned through every excuse. I felt no joy watching him shrink into himself. Only distance. The kind that finally lets you breathe. When the gavel fell, it echoed longer than I expected. Final.
Clean.
Unchangeable. As I stood to leave, the judge looked at me directly. "You protected your child," she said quietly. "That is what the law exists for." I nodded, throat tight, holding my son closer. Outside the courthouse, I realized something had ended for good, and something else had finally begun. That night, my son slept in his crib again. I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching his chest rise and fall. The room felt alive in a way it hadn't for months. Not loud, just safe. I tucked the blanket around him and placed his stuffed bear back beside his arm. He shifted, murmured softly, then settled. No fear. No confusion. Just sleep. I sat in the rocking chair and finally let myself cry. Not the sharp panic tears from before, but slow ones that came from release. My body felt heavy, like it had been carrying something far too long. For the first time, I didn't replay the courtroom or her words. I thought about mornings, breakfasts, teaching him to talk, teaching him to trust again. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of possibility. I whispered, "We're home," even though he couldn't hear me. Maybe I needed to hear it more than he did. A week later, My lawyer forwarded an email from a family rights nonprofit. They had followed the case closely. They wanted me to join their advocacy board. At your own pace, they wrote. Your experience could help other parents. I stared at the screen for a long time. For months, my story had been used to hurt me, twisted, rewritten. Now, it could be used to protect someone else. I said yes. At the first meeting, I sat quietly, listening to other parents speak about fear, courts, and silence. I recognized the looks on their faces, the exhaustion, the doubt. When it was my turn, my voice shook, but I spoke anyway. I talked about the empty crib, the forged papers, the moment my child was returned to me. No one interrupted. Afterward, a woman hugged me and whispered, "You gave me hope." That was when I understood something important. Justice didn't end my pain. It gave it purpose. Months later, my phone rang late at night. I almost didn't answer. It was my ex. His voice cracked as soon as I said hello. I lost everything, he said. My job. My family. I don't know who I am anymore. I closed my eyes listening. I felt sadness, but not guilt. I warned you, I said quietly. I begged you to stop. I didn't think it would go this far, he whispered. I looked at my son sleeping on the couch beside me, his small hand curled around my finger. So did I said. Until you help me find what matters.
He cried.
I didn't. When the call ended, I felt lighter. Not because he suffered, but because I no longer carried responsibility for his choices. That chapter was closed. We moved to a new city when spring arrived. I chose it carefully. Not too big, not too small. A place where no one knew our names or our past unless I decided to share it. The drive there felt like crossing an invisible line. With every mile, my chest felt lighter. Our new apartment was modest but bright. Sunlight spilled across the floors in the morning. My son toddled from room to room, curious and fearless, like he sensed the danger was finally gone. I watched him learn where his toys belonged, where the windows were, where I always stood. Our days settled into routine. Daycare drop-offs, grocery lists, park afternoons where he laughed freely. I stopped flinching at every unknown car or ringing phone. I slept through the night without jolting awake in panic. One afternoon, I lifted a heavy box, straining slightly. My son watched closely, then smiled and said, "Mama strong." I sat on the floor and cried, holding him tight. He was right. I returned to the courthouse months later, not as a party in a case, but as an observer. The room felt different when the fear was gone.
Smaller.
Less powerful. She sat at the defense table, shoulders slumped, hair pulled back without care. No confidence remained. When her eyes found mine, they widened slightly, then dropped. There was no anger in them anymore. Just panic and regret. The judge read the sentence slowly. Interference of parental rights. Document forgery. False representation. Supervised probation. Mandatory counseling. A permanent court record. Each word landed heavy. She looked at me once more, eyes shining with tears, silently begging for something, mercy, forgiveness, rescue. I gave her nothing. Not because I hated her, but because I had learned something important. Saving her was never my job. When the gavel struck, it echoed through the room. Final. Finished. I stood quietly, picked up my bag, and walked out without looking back. The past stayed behind me, exactly where it belonged. The final custody order arrived a week later. Thick paper. Official seals. The kind of document that couldn't be twisted or taken away. Full custody restored permanently. I read the line again, just to be sure. That evening, I carried my son into our living room, sunlight pouring through the windows. He laughed as I lifted him, wrapping his arms around my neck. We were free. No courts. No lies. No fear waiting in the corners. I set him down, and he ran toward his toys, safe and certain. I watched him play, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace without tension, joy without waiting for it to break. Justice didn't roar. It didn't shout. It whispered. It sounded like my son laughing. It felt like walking out whole. It looked like a future no one could steal. And as I closed the door behind us that night, I knew the truth at last. We were finally home. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe for more powerful revenge stories, and tell me in the comments what part hit you the hardest.